In the first series of talks that I did, or the first talk I did, we were talking about the difference between arteries and veins and how arteries and veins worked and the different types of arteries and veins that you have in your body. Then we briefly touched on the heart structures and functions. We briefly introduced terminology such as the aorta, the superior vena cava, the right pulmonary artery, the pulmonary veins, right atria, semilunar valves, AV valve or atrioventricular valve, right ventricle, inferior vena cava, septum, descending aorta, left ventricle, semilunar valve, a second AV valve, left atrium, left pulmonary vein, as well as left pulmonary arteries. We do this because these are important in tracing the blood flow through the heart. These structures are important. So the basic structure of a human heart consists of aortic valves. You can see that here, 1, 2, 3. A right atrium, left or right ventricles. So blue indicates that this is deoxygenated blood. It's blood returning from the body. You have pulmonary arteries, which take blood to the lungs. Pulmonary refers to lungs. It's derived from Latin. The left atrium, where the blood returns from the lungs, it's red, it's oxygenated, and it returns to the body. The right and the left side of the heart are separated by this thing called an interventricular septum. So this septum separates the right side of the heart from the left side of the heart. As well as within the heart are these muscle strands which help in contraction. They're called chordae tendineae. So here we have the right ventricle contracts and leads the blood to the pulmonary arteries. The left ventricle is very muscular. It pumps blood into the aorta. So blood returns from the body, goes into the right atrium, then the right ventricle. Then it travels to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. It returns through the pulmonary vein into the right atrium, then right ventricle, or the right ventricle, then left atrium, then left ventricle, and then exits through the aorta. Again, the right side deals with deoxygenated blood. The blood looks blue. You can even see those vessels that contain deoxygenated blood in your own arm. They're the ones that are blue. And oxygenated blood is red. Blue, right is blue, left is red. Deoxygenated and oxygenated blood. These two sets of pumps pump blood to supply your body with oxygen and nutrients. The first two parts of the heart we're going to talk about are the right atrium and the left atrium. These two structures have thin walls. They receive blood from the veins, either the veins from the body or the pulmonary veins. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood, so blood without oxygen from the vena cava. That's the primary vein in the body. The atrium pumps the blood into the right ventricle. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the pulmonary veins and pumps blood into the left ventricle. The next two structures are muscular thick-walled structures of your heart. So they are the part that does the strongest type of pumping. Their job is to pump blood into the arteries, either if you're talking about the right side, the pulmonary arteries, or if you're talking about the left side, the aorta. So the right ventricle pumps blood into the pulmonary artery, that goes to the lungs. The left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. Why is the left ventricle more muscular than the right ventricle? Because the right ventricle's job is only to pump blood into the lungs. The left ventricle's job has a much harder job. It has to pump blood throughout the body. Next, we're going to talk about those valves that exist between the atrium, which are at the top, and the ventricles, which are at the bottom. These valves are called atrioventricular valves, or AV valves. They are flaps of tissue that are located between the atria and the ventricles in your heart. And that sort of tells you the name, atrioventricular. What is their function? Like the valves, the one-way valves with veins, these valves function in the same way, and it's to prevent blood from flowing back into the atria from the ventricles. So it shuts the blood flow down. How are these valves supported? They're supported by these band of tissues that are known as the chordae tendineae. So the job of this is to hold those valves closed when the ventricles are filled with blood. What is the job of those semilunar valves? The semilunar valves are half-moon-shaped valves, and that's why they call them semilunar, that are at the base of the arteries as it's leaving the heart. So you have a semilunar valve with your pulmonary artery, and you have a semilunar valve with your aorta. What it does is it prevents the blood, again, from returning to the heart, from flowing back into the ventricles after it has left the heart. So again, it acts the same way as those valves and veins did, and it stops backflow. What are the vessels that you can find leading off of your heart? The first vessel is called the superior vena cava. It carries blood that is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide. So we call that deoxygenated because it doesn't have a lot of oxygen. The superior vena cava is connected to your right atrium. It's blue to indicate not a lot of oxygen. What does the inferior vena cava do? It does the same thing. It carries blood that is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide from your lower body, from your legs, from your core, back into the heart. So superior head, inferior body, into the right atrium. What does the pulmonary artery do? Normally, we say that arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary artery is your one exception. The pulmonary artery takes blood that doesn't have oxygen in it and carries it to the lungs so that it can get oxygen. Pulmonary veins return blood to the heart. This blood, again, this is your one exception, the pulmonary vein returns oxygenated blood to the heart, to the left atrium. For pulmonary veins, there are 4 of them. They carry oxygenated blood from the heart or from the lungs back to the heart so that it can be transported to the rest of the body. The aorta carries oxygenated blood, so blood that contains oxygen from the heart to the rest of the tissues of your body. As you can see, the aorta branches. Some branches go to the lower body, some branches go to the upper body. Here you can see the major arteries and veins of the human body. You can see the jugular vein, which is this vein in blue. It is running down your neck. Carotid arteries run down your neck. The pulmonary vein, again, takes blood back to the heart from the lungs. The interior vena cava returns blood to the heart from the lower half, or the inferior vena cava returns blood to the heart from the lower half of your body. Your femoral veins return blood to your heart from your legs. You have a femoral artery that takes blood down into your legs. You have an abdominal aorta that is responsible for transporting blood down into the lower half of your body. Your renal artery is your artery that's involved in filtering blood through your kidneys. So what is the pathway of blood through your heart? We call that pathway of blood through your heart a cardiac cycle. A cardiac cycle is defined as one heartbeat. Your heart beats between approximately 60 and 75 times per minute. Two sides of the heart beat in unison. First the atria beat and then the ventricles. So it's atria, ventricle, atria, ventricle. When you go to the doctor, they will measure your blood pressure, and they will take two measurements. They will take a systolic and a diastolic measurement. In order to take those measurements, you have to understand them. You have to know what the root words are. So systole is the root of systolic, which means the heart or the ventricles contract. Distole means that the heart ventricles relaxes. So here's a picture of the cardiac cycle. As you can see, first the atria are filling up with blood, either through the pulmonary veins or through the vena cava. That blood then goes down into the ventricles. The ventricles contract, sending blood to the aorta or to the lungs. The right side, the blue side, sends blood to the lungs. The right side, or the left side, the red side, sends blood to the rest of the body. So as the heart relaxes, the atria fill with blood. The atria contract, your AV valves open, which are these. Your AV valves open. Ventricles fill with blood. As the ventricles fill with blood, the semilunar valve closes, which is here. As that semilunar valve closes, people who are listening to the heart through a stethoscope hear a dub sound. Ventricles contract, so these guys contract at the bottom, and blood is forced out of the semilunar, out of the arteries through the semilunar valve, so here and here, and that creates a lub sound. So that's the dub lub of your heartbeat. The heart sound that people often hear or listen for if you're sick or they think you have a heart problem is called, sounds sort of like lub dub, lub dub. Again, the lub is the AV valves closing. So this is the systole phase. The heart starts to contract. The dub sound is the semilunar valves closing. So those valves on the arteries, the pulmonary artery or the aorta close, and the heart relaxes. That's the distole phase. So lub is systole and dub is distole. Here we have an EKG, an echocardiogram, where it outlines the stages of a heartbeat. So in this first part here, that the little yellow that you may or may not be able to see, you have blood flowing into the heart and to the two atria. So that's the first little bump that you see in measurement. And the semilunar valves, the AV valves close, and then the dub stage is the end of it right here, where the semilunar valves open and blood is released either to the lungs or to the rest of the body. So here is a animation of the blood moving through your body. The deoxygenated blood goes through the atria to the ventricle, out the pulmonary artery, into the lungs, back through the pulmonary veins, into the left atria, left ventricle, and then out the aorta to the rest of the body. There are only two main circulatory paths for the body. The first is circulation, so to the lungs, that's one path, the pulmonary circulation. And then the other one is systemic or body circulation. So blood can either go to the lungs to pick up oxygen or to the body to get depleted of oxygen. Pulmonary circulation carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs. So deoxygenated means oxygen poor to the lungs via, again, or with the pulmonary artery. At the lungs, the blood releases carbon dioxide and picks up oxygen. This oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood is carried back to the heart using the pulmonary veins. Systemic or systematic or body circulation involve vessels that carry blood both to and from body cells. Examples of these are the coronary artery, the renal artery, and the portal vein. So each one of these is sort of a closed system where it's all running back to the heart, right? Again, these are all going out to the body and back to the heart. What are the heart parts of... What does coronary circulation do? It supplies blood vessels to the heart, or blood to the heart muscles. So coronary circulation involves those blood vessels that feed the heart and keep it beating. Because there are a right and left part of the heart, there are right and left coronary arteries. So here's the right coronary artery here, and the left coronary artery here. So right coronary artery, left coronary artery.